My name is Erica Hellstrom, if you don't know me already. I see a lot of familiar faces though, and we're really excited to be able to do this. Hi, Maureen. We're really excited to be able to, offer something virtual, even though we all want to be together. So this is our first solo virtual exhibit, and we hope to do a virtual main gallery and a virtual Nielsen gallery as we go along, and just try to keep us all connected during these really uncertain, difficult times. And we'll get started. So, William, you want to take it over?
All right. Thank you very much. And thank you for everybody for joining. And thank you to Erica and Catherine for kicking this off, this program off with me, calling me and seeing if I'd be willing to participate. I'll begin with just a quick biography so people will know. People tend to know only just one aspect of who know me, just know the few years that we've been together. So native New Jerseyan, born in Somerset County, went to film school in Boston, and after that I headed out to Los Angeles for 5 years. Came back to New Jersey after that, was sort of rudderless for a little while, and then discovered I had a good talent for graphic design, so I got a job as a magazine designer. And that led into doing marketing supervision of a design team. And then in 2004, I decided to start my own studio, design studio that is. And simultaneously, I decided to start painting more in earnest. So in starting my own studio, becoming self-employed, basically gave me an open schedule to be able to paint sort of at my leisure. Flash forward to 2012, where I was chosen by the Monmouth Museum as an emerging artist for the New Jersey Emerging Artist Program that the museum runs. And that began the relationship I have with them. Since then, I have a piece in a show at the museum about once a year, once every other year. Today, still have the design studio business going, and I am, as far as the art side, I'm represented by a gallery called Dab Art in Los Angeles. They also have locations in Ventura, California, Mexico City, and last night I got an email from the gallery director saying that she is confident that probably by the end of the year they'll have another location in Austin, Texas opening up.
I did get a couple of questions ahead of time, so maybe we could take a look at a few of those, and then if you want to show us a little bit of your gallery.
Yeah, that's good.
So an interesting one, just from your design style as well. Are you a fan of comic books?
No, I am not, which is a little confusing because that seems to be like what I do. But it's really that I like the style of comic books. I like the high contrast. I've been doing illustration most of my life, so it's a discipline that I'm familiar with. But I like the lurid colors, not of current comic books, but really of like the Silver Age comics of the 50s and 60s. And I like just the kind of the melodramatic presentation of that, everybody has their emotions and their intentions out in the open, and that's something I like, that because that's something that does not happen much in reality.
I got another one for you. Did you go to art school?
No, I did not. Oh, and hello, Barbara Farrow. Shout out to you. There's she and Tom. I worked with them both when I was in California, so I have not seen her in over 25 years either. Good to see you. No, I didn't go to art school. I went to film school. And although I did, while I was in film school in Boston, I did work at a small animation studio because it seemed to combine the two things that I was interested in the most, which was drawing and film. That's eventually what led me out to Los Angeles too. But no, I didn't go to art school. Anything that I've done is been all self-taught.
Gotcha. I have a question from Barbara Farrow,
Yes.
and it is, who or what is your biggest inspiration?
Yeah.
And I'll unmute you, Barbara, if you want to add anything to that question.
I got that question. I was a contract worker at a small business last year, and they were really big on like mission statements and being passionate about your job, yada, yada, yada. And one of the questions they had is like, what inspires you? And most people would say like, oh, my family or my church or something like that. And really the answer is, my inspiration comes from a lot of different sources, and I never know really what is going to be inspiring for me. There's not really one thing or one person that I can pin as, yes, that's like the constant thread. The inspiration comes from all over.
Okay, that's fair.
I'm going to unmute Larry now. Larry has a question for you.
Yeah, how are you? You have any mentors, favorite artists that you've, followed or tried to emulate a little bit?
The obvious one would be Liechtenstein, but I'm not really. No, I mean, again, that's like a. I have a general interest in art, but not any particular artist. And I don't really follow the careers of anyone living or dead, other than, maybe in an art history or an article or something like that.
That's interesting. Cool.
I know with your artist statement, you had mentioned an experience. Do you want to talk about that?
Oh, okay. So I think a couple people who actually read that might have misunderstood. When I lived in Los Angeles, I went to the LA County Museum, and it was the first time I ever saw a Mondrian in person. And it was, I say it was a disappointment, not that the painting itself disappointed me, but that prior to that, I'd only seen them in books. I'd only seen photographs, at least, when they're that small in a book. In person, it's a large canvas. I'm seeing all the flaws. I'm seeing pencil marks, I'm seeing brush strokes, I'm seeing, canvas where paint, it wasn't painted. And it was disappointing just because my expectation was something different. So when I take a photo of my work, I try to make it as true to the piece. And I also paint the piece in a way that I know it's going to photograph in a specific way. So that when you see it and when we go into the gallery, what you're seeing in the gallery, in this virtual gallery, is very close to what you would see in person.
I know I have one question before you go to that, and I'm in awe of how you get such clean, straight, crisp, smooth lines. How do you do this?
It's very secret? It's no secret, but not many people would want to try it. It's very tedious and time consuming. I basically thin it's all acrylics. I paint in acrylics, and I thin the acrylic out to almost the consistency like a thin pancake batter. And the way it's applied to the canvas is in layers. So each layer builds upon the previous, and the acrylic dries very flat. And as far as the crisp lines and stuff, it's just painstaking, being right up on the canvas with a very tiny stroke, standing back and looking at it, then getting up again, clean, very tiny, standing back and looking at it. Usually once the first layer or two of color has been put down, I can get a little bit more loose because now I have the borders to follow. I mean, it almost becomes like paint by numbers at that point. But there are times when I'll look at a piece and it'll have a lot of intricate line work on it, and I'll just be like, what was I thinking? Why did I? Oh God, this is going to take forever. But I've never cut corners in as far as, this is the way I wanted it to look. This is the way I'm going to paint it. I'm not going to, unless there was some kind of urgent deadline there, if I set it up in a specific way at the beginning to paint it, that's how it's going to be, even though it might turn out to be very tedious and time consuming for me, because it's the end product there at that point that matters to me, not so much the process.
Even your color choices are really amazing. So
Oh, well, thank you.
you're welcome. I think Barbara has another question, so we'll let Barbara unmute. And then we're going to take a look at, if you share your screen, we'll take a look at the gallery together.
Yeah, okay. Oh, yeah.
When you're concepting and then finishing the piece, does it turn out as you expected, or is it a surprise, meaning it has this organic creative process and the end result is a little different than what you thought it was going to be?
Occasionally. Most of the time, the way I do it in the color sketch is how it turns out. There was one occasion where I had done the color sketch, and at that time I was using this little like a projector that was basically made for kids, because it was the only one I could afford. And to project something like I would project the black and white artwork onto the canvas and then draw the pencil lines based on that. But since it was such a small projector, I could only project like, a quarter of the canvas at a time. So I would do that quarter, move the projector, do it again. But most of the time it's usually like, this is how it was in the drawing and in the color concept. This is how it's going to look when it's on canvas.
Okay, thank you.
Yeah, you're welcome.
If you came in a couple minutes after we started. And I want to thank the museum board members that are on as well, because behind the scenes, Kathy Esposito is on, Lenore is on, Maureen. It's been difficult these past couple of months, but we're all hanging on tight. And I want to thank Larry and Ben. Marianne chairs the exhibition committee with Dan Fensky, and just thank you for everything that you've done to support us, and anything we can do to support the artists, we're doing whatever we can to keep it going, keep the momentum.
All right, everybody able to see that?
Yep.
Yep.
I think we're good.
Before I start, if there's a specific piece that somebody wants to know something about or have me talk about, let me know, because I tend to go into excruciating details on things, and because that's interesting to me. And it could be like I end up just using up the entire hour talking about 3 pieces. So I'll try not to do that, but if there's a piece in particular that you want to know about, just go ahead and say, hey, what about this one?
Yes, feel free to unmute yourself and just ask away, or if you put it in the chat, I can also share it as well. I'll be watching.
All right, well, if not, I'll just start with this wall over here. Because this one represents the painting on the right, the airplane. That's the oldest one in this exhibition. The one second to the left, the 3 panels on top of each other. That's not the most current, but that was done in 2020. So you're sort of seeing the span of the style there. And stylistically, there's not much difference between those two, I'll admit it, but they're, I'll go in first on this one, conditions normal. And I'll show you what's nice about the exhibit app. If you got a nice monitor with high definition, you can actually see the grain of the canvas in this, which I think is cool. The reason it showed up is because I used to take my pieces outside on a sunny day to photograph them, and so you get a little bit of the shadow of the canvas grain when you do that. Now I have a strobe lighting kit, and that pretty just eliminates eliminates everything. It just no shadows whatsoever. So this one was done in 2006. The stretcher bars were ones that my mom had given me that her mother had. Her mother was a watercolor artist, but also had did some canvases on occasion, and she had these stretcher bars left over from, I guess, from her estate. She gave them to me. I decided to make use of them, use a little bit of the bones of an ancestor, so to speak, there. In this one's pretty much a straightforward comic book panel, which is what I was doing at the time. In 2006, I was kind of upbeat. I'd been painting and doing my own business for 2 years and things. I was now making at least a survivable income, so I was happy. And this, reflects that it's how I was feeling. And if you know the line, "The conditions normal were coming home," is actually from a song by a band called Orchestral Maneuvers in the Dark. The song itself is actually kind of a love song about the Enola Gay bomber. And one of the lines in it is, "Conditions normal, we're coming home." And it's just so happy and upbeat, even though it's about dropping a nuclear bomb, that, it's the song that I have in my head whenever I see this one, this piece as well. I should add that the frame, it is framed, but the frame here is added by exhibit, and it's pretty close to what it looks like. It's in a box frame, but if you look in the lower left-hand corner, it cuts off my my signature a little bit, so it cuts in a little bit on the canvases. I'm going to head over to this one next to it. It's another airplane. Now, okay, so this was kind of more of a straightforward one as well. I was trying to meet the aesthetic qualities that the judges would like for this show. But what I did here was I put the talk balloon off the frame. And there's another piece to the left of this one that I'll get to shortly, where I did the same thing. And this was just experimenting with, prior to this, I was always including the talk balloon incomplete or complete on the canvas. Doing it this way leaves it open for interpretation. I'm not really confining someone to what the text is. They can fill it in themselves. They can apply their own interpretation to what a lot of people just say, well, what does it say? What did you want it to say? And I'm like, oh, no, you only the words that you can read, you make up the rest. And that leaves some people unsatisfied. Above this one, it's another plane. This is the plane wall. And in this one is small, although it's large on screen. It's actually small compared to all the other pieces. This, again, I was experimenting. This one I did specifically for an auction in the Catskills. So I made it small and decided I would experiment using, this time not using a font instead of like the handwritten lettering of a comic book. I would use a font as sort of a knockout. It was also what I was doing in design work at the time as well. So this is where my design world and my art world start to cross. And again, like you had asked about or said about the color choices here, I'm not sure I was doing it at this point, where there was a period of where I was only using 6 colors to see if I could actually pare my palette down to that little. And this was sort of like that as well, but again, it's really just to make the subject come out from the background. And at the same time, with the lettering, it's sort of to make it that you're either going to look at the plane or you're going to read the text. It's kind of hard to see both at the same time. I'm going to skip over to this one. This was the first one where I actually put text off the frame. And I don't know what the phrase should be, because I just started, I started writing it and you know, just a few words, and that was it. The subject here, or how this one, the impetus, I should say, of this one was, my dad was terminally ill at this point, and one night I went to see him. Family members were visiting. He was basically bedridden in his home at that point. And when I got to the house, my stepmother said, you know, would you like to stay for dinner? We've got, you know, sisters, brothers, stepsisters here. And I said, sure. Went in to talk to my dad, and I said, well, you know, I'm going to be staying for dinner. And he just ripped into me something fierce, really read me the riot act out of nowhere. It was a surprise because he rarely lost his temper like this. And it seemed like kind of a strange thing to be angry about, although he was like, you know, did you ask anybody if you could do this? And I didn't ask somebody, you know, and I think it's pretty inconsiderate, you know, that kind of thing. And, you know, there's such a conflict of emotions at that point, because it's really hard to be sympathetic to somebody who's chewing you out, even if he's terminally ill. And I walked out of the bedroom and said, you know, maybe I shouldn't stay. He seems really angry about this. You know, ultimately it was, you know, I did stay, but it was, you know, it was probably the medication he was taking. The coloring on this man's face, a little bit prior to this, I had showed a painting where I'd used Ben-Day dots. Those are the little dots on top of another color that will make, you know, if you do red dots on top of yellow, you stand back far enough, it looks orange. So I showed that, you know, a piece to a friend of mine that I had done that way. And she said, it looks like the woman has measles. I don't like it when you use that. So in doing this one for the color, I decided I would use 2 enormous dots just to spite her. But at the same time, it also kind of breaks up that large area of color. And it's odd that it does sort of, it works with the lines of the piece. It was, you know, I can't say it was what I intended, but it happens that way. Go back to this one. Now, this is actually a narrative. Like it's purposely set up as a narrative, but at the same time, it's set up as an enigmatic narrative. It's called in media res, which is Latin, I believe, for in the midst of things. In a story, like a movie would start out dropping you into the midst of a scene. So in this case, we're being put into the middle of a scene, but you know, you don't know who are the characters, who's talking, you know, what's the relationship here. You can get a sense that there's a conflict obviously going on, but you know, it's even questions like as simple as where are they and what's on fire. And I did this because I set it up this way because I found that a lot of people, and I do this too, when you go to a museum or a gallery and you're looking at a piece and you don't know anything about it, a lot of people just tend to make up a story to go along with it, with the piece, whether or not a story needs to be applied. But that's, that's human nature, because we will apply a narrative to something that we don't know or is unknown about it. So in this case, there is an obvious narrative that I've applied to it, but it also relies on the viewer to fill in their own parts of the story. I am going to do a 180 here.
Hey, William,
Yes.
quick question. So these are all oils on canvas?
They're acrylic.
Acrylic on canvas, right?
Yes, correct.
So do they have any origination, like some kind of computer generation or anything like that, in terms of like a sketch or anything like that? Or are they strictly, you're working with canvas and oil?
Well, interesting. Let me stop the screen share I'll stop the share real quick just to show you that there is a computer involved at one point, but for that piece that we were just looking at, the in media res, this is my sketchbook. Here's a thumbnail sketch, hand drawn, of that piece as it was done originally. Then I've got, again, now there is the cleaned up second canvas of that piece. This is what I will scan this in. This will become part of a Photoshop file. You'll see that the guy is missing because I drew him separately, did a rough drawing, and then cleaned it up on a piece of vellum. And he's actually too big and too detailed to go in the size of this, but I scan these different elements in. I rarely draw anything complete in one drawing. I will scan them in Photoshop and then place them where I want them to be. And if sometimes I'll actually clean the drawing up. If it's too rough for me, I will clean it up in Illustrator to get very clean lines that I then print out and will, I print out the black and white artwork, and then I will project that onto the canvas to draw the pencil lines.
Oh, very interesting. Thank you.
Yeah, you're welcome. Let me share screen again. We'll go back to the gallery. So with the three, this is actually, I didn't realize it when I was setting this up. This is sort of the prescription wall, prescription medication wall. The three on the right here are from left to right. It's lorem ipsum dolor. Those are Latin text or Latin words. It's the first three words of a speech, I believe, by Cicero. That is used when you're doing typographical work and you don't have text. You fill it in with this dummy text, this dummy Latin text. I do that a lot in design work. I did these in 2008. 2008 was kind of a year where it was best and bad at the same time. Best thing, or best things were in January of that year, I had my first solo show. And by the end of the year, I was being represented by a gallery in Los Angeles and was part of a group show out there. So those are very, very good things. The bad things were, my dad had just died in the fall of 2007, and now my siblings and I were in the midst of kind of a battle over his estate with our stepmother. And it was very, very Dallasy and not what he intended people to be doing. But part of that process was we as siblings, we'd get up in the morning, check our emails, and we'd see a message from the opposing lawyer saying that everything they agreed to the previous day, they're rescinding and they're going to stick the screws to us even harder. So just had us on edge all the time. in the midst of this, my probably in May or April of that year, my mind suddenly goes into overdrive. Excuse me. I have just this constant streams of thought, just like invasive streams of thought going on. And the thoughts are mostly, I've really screwed up everything in my life. This is how things are going to be for the rest of my life. It's always going to suck. I've ruined relationships, and there's nothing I can do about it. It was just all very negative stuff, and it was all constant. It was there all the time. I also became very anxious, just generally anxious, and feeling like everything was a threat, but not really knowing, understanding why, and not having a specific sense of why something should be a threat. Ultimately, in talking to my sister, we we figured out that it must have been I had just gotten a prescription refill a few days before this started happening, and even though it was a prescription that I had been taking for a while, and it was like, nothing had changed in it, it had this effect on me. So the idea that like all the active ingredient must have clumped into those pills instead of dispersing. So I was just having a side effect of this. By the time, I stopped taking it, the anxiety and the thoughts went away. It gave me sort of a taste of what some people feel all the time. So that was disturbing in some ways, because I was like, wow, what if, I'm able to stop this. There are some people who aren't. But in this whole process, I decided, okay, I'll do some canvases, or I'll do some paintings based on the thoughts that I had, and do it in a way that tries to represent just how constant and overwhelming they were for me. Initially, I had done them, or I started with Lauren, which is the one on the left. I had just done it yellow with plain black text. Everything was black text. I showed it to my sister, and she said, well, that's really cool, but she had a really good idea. Why don't you just make some of the letters different colors, so that it's not just this mass of black text on there, which was a great idea. And that's what I did. I ended up just doing random. Some people will look at it and try to make words out of, like, all the red letters means, but no, it's just completely random in that case. The three on the top, they were originally, right now, they're all 12 by 12 inches square. The three on the top were originally 12 by 36 inches. If you're not familiar with these are Department of Transportation warning symbols that you will see on tanks carrying chemicals and whatnot. This one began, and I'll say this is another prescription painting or prescription work. For most of my adult life, I've just been chronically exhausted, and it sucks. And you wouldn't know that if you spent time with me, because I seem very upbeat and energetic, but that's not the case at all behind closed doors. And I fall asleep, or I get very tired during the day, very suddenly. And so by let's see, the 2008 was when I did the top three there. One day I'm sitting at a traffic light. I see that multicolored triangle or diamond symbol on a tank across the street from me. And I'm thinking, you know what? This is a fanciful thought, but the answer to what is plaguing me could be inside of that tank, and I'll never know, because I don't know what that symbol means. I can't interpret it. And I can't interpret any of these. You need specialized knowledge. That got me thinking about alchemy, where everything is written in codes, and you need, special knowledge to be able to interpret them and create the alchemic formulas. So the top one is called Elixir, originally wider. And the idea here is I took the four symbols and sort of, ironically made the backgrounds the opposite of what I was feeling, which the backgrounds are 4 different types of how energy is represented in a comic book. So on the top one, you've got an explosion. On the second one down, you've got sort of this mystical plasma energy. 4th one down is lightning, and the 5th one down, concentric circles, represents psychic energy. You can see those coming out of somebody's forehead. And that the symbols themselves, I picked them not randomly, but I picked them for the colors out of the DOT library of symbols. So I'm not really sure what any of them mean. Obviously the second one down has something to do with a fire hazard, and the 4th one down is radioactive. They are distorted instead of being, because I originally had done the top one as just a straight up diamond, but it looked kind of dull. So in Photoshop, I used the warp tool to distort the image, make it look, this is something that I was doing around that time in the 2008 or so, making it look like it was a printing error. The sheet got stuck in the press or got pulled a weird way going through the press, and that the ink got smeared. The reason they're no longer 36 inches wide, there was a show called Small Work Show at the Edward Hopper House about 10 some years ago. And no piece could be bigger than 12 inches. And the juror for that show was the director of the Roy Lichtenstein Foundation. So I figured, hey man, I'm like a shoe-in for this. But I had to, they couldn't be 3 feet wide. So I digitally cut down the images when I submitted them, figuring that, okay, if they get selected, I'll cut them down in real, but I'm not gonna mutilate them if they're not gonna get picked. Well, they did get picked. I did cut them down. Eventually I cut the other one down that hadn't been, and when I painted the 4th one on the bottom, I just did it 12 by 12. And it was, a good thing that I did this, because I got a juror recognition award for that show.
Well, I would just like to let you know I have that 4th one, radioactive, hanging in my room.
You're the one who bought it. Thank you. And you have the one.
Yes, the radio tower.
The radio tower as well.
Yeah, there
Awesome.
it is.
Yep.
Yeah. I'm wondering if there was another copy, but I recognize it's digital.
Yeah, I'll talk about these two, because these 2 towers are part of a very extended series, because I've only painted 2. I had 4 in mind. I have not gotten to the other 2 yet. Where I used to live, there was a water tower out the back that I would see out my back window every day. And I just, for whatever reason, I like the image of a tower of any kind just sticking up out of nature, out of the trees in the middle of a field. And it's not because like when these have been exhibited previously, some people say, so it's sort of the, man encroaching upon nature. And I'm like, no, that's not it at all. It's more of like a sense of the towers kind of being these quiet sentinels that are watching over us, even though that's obviously not what they are, but that's what they feel like to me when I see them, because they're very tall, they're very megalithic. So the water tower, although the tower that was behind me was not that large, that was the kind of sort of the squat water tower that I decided to paint there. The radio tower actually is one that is in Martinsville, New Jersey. It used to look like that, and what I liked about it was just sort of the haphazard way that it looked like it was put together, with the different platforms and all of these strange shapes on it that sort of reminiscent of the Sydney Opera House just sticking out there. I think these are like what cell towers used to look like way back in the 60s, but about 10 plus years ago, all of that got ripped off. And now the tower is still there, but basically just has this enormous geodesic sphere on top of it. Not as interesting looking to me, but still interesting to see from a distance, just this white, giant golf ball basically sticking up over the trees. I'm going to go to this one to the right of it really quick. This was just in the 42nd annual show at physically there at the Monmouth Museum. And when I look at it now, I just think, wow, this is becoming more relevant, and it will probably stay relevant for the coming year or so. This began as a completely different idea, different concept, something that I had sketched out about 6 years ago. After a very frustrating day where I had been working at the time, I finally bought the stretcher bars and decided, okay, I'll work on this one in 2020. But by the time I got around to putting it together and prepping the canvas, the message behind it really just seemed tone deaf. You know, it was coming from a white middle-class male who's living pretty comfortably right now in a time when a lot of people aren't. And so I thought, you know, this, although the sentiment was still true, and the sentiment would probably be one that a lot of people would relate to, it was just not appropriate for the time. I opted to do image of an AR, or well, image of a rifle firing instead. As I told a friend of mine recently, I basically have 5 subjects when it comes to painting: men, women, cars, airplanes, weapons. So this is a weapon painting. Initially, the text behind it was going to be, "You have my thoughts and prayers," which is sort of the lackluster response a lot of politicians come up with after a mass shooting. But ultimately, I decided against that because I don't want to get into Second Amendment debates with my work. I don't really want even to, you know, dip my foot into explicitly political statements with my work. So I thought about it some more. Originally, too, it was an AK-47, which in doing research I discovered is illegal to own. So it was going to work better if it was an actual, it was a rifle that could be purchased. This is an AR-15, the most popular rifle out there right now. The NRA calls it the Modern Musket. The phrase behind it, "just like someone's neighbor," comes from a song. I get a lot of the text that I will put on in the work. I will pull from songs that I like. It's a Human League song from the early 80s called "Dreams of Leaving." It's actually a song about immigration, but it has this line in it that says, the person hopes to fit in where he's moving and become just like someone's neighbor. And that, you know, I painted this over the summer, and it felt appropriate at that point because a lot of neighbors were now hauling out their weapons. And, you know, it's become more of that. And I'm trying, again, not to be political about it, but just more of the observation of what conspiracies and paranoia and fear can make people do, not only purchase weapons, but haul out the collection that they had or that they have. You know, somebody that you could be live next door to 20 years and you know, share recipes, bring them cookies and stuff. You know, suddenly they got a huge assault rifle over their shoulder one day. "Oh yeah, I didn't know I've had this. Oh yeah, I got a whole collection," you know. But they're just like your neighbor. Well, they are their neighbor. They're just, initially I was going to do this in fluorescent paints. That's some of the work in this in the gallery here are done in fluorescence. But fluorescents have issues. I just wasn't able to work through them, get the consistency correct on it. So I ended up going with just straight up acrylics. But what I ended up doing instead was the bullets. I had some gold leaf that I had bought for a different piece. So I decided to do the shell casings in gold leaf. You sort of see it. It's much more impressive in person. I am just going to swing over here to the abstracts, just because these 4 are different than any of the other pieces in here. The three here on the right, this was going to be, it's a series of three. It was going to be more. The one on the left I did first, and it was actually a business card design that I had done, but I had never used. But I thought, well, that might look interesting as a large painting. And it's got the shapes, like this goes back to a book that I bought about 10 years ago, Popular Mechanics had put out, called The Wonderful Future That Never Was. And it is about predictions of the past that never came to fulfillment, some that did. But basically, the future that we were supposed to live in is not the one that has come to pass. And these pieces represent the future, how I wanted it to look. You know, like a Sid Mead concept drawing, that shapes and bright colors like this would be on the sides of building, that things would be identified by like numbers and letters like this. And because I was interested in cryptography at that point, and also had listened to a show about numbers stations, which are these very peculiar shortwave radio stations that just broadcast a computerized voice reading off random numbers. Nobody's completely sure what they are for. It's believed that it's code, but if you would only understand the code if you're the person who has the cipher to break it. So I did these, the identifications are done in alphanumeric, but the titles themselves are the NATO phonetic pronunciations of them. So on the left, you've got X-ray Bravo 01. The middle one is Delta Tango 79er. And on the right, you have Kilo Romeo 36. One on the right sold. The one on the middle, I did for myself. So that's over my TV in my living room right now. And the one on the right is, or the left is available. And I'm gonna quick do this one here before we run out of time. Although it looks like it's, this is the way that Exhibit renders it. I didn't put them in as separate pieces. I put them in as one large piece. So it makes it look like it's on a board or something, but it's not. They're actually 6 separate canvases. These are representations of the buttons on a Honeywell 200 computer, which is one of the earliest punch card computers. And what I liked about them is that there was a show from the 70s called Space 1999 that I really like. And now as an adult, I liked it as a kid because it was science fiction and there wasn't much of that on TV. As an adult, what I like is the set design. And I can just watch an episode and just get lost in like the amount of detail that was put in the background pieces. And one of the things they had were these odd, colorful squares with just these random symbols on them. And eventually I discovered the Honeywell 200 computer and realized that, okay, those squares are supposed to be programming buttons, or most likely, like that's the inspiration for that that background piece. So these are large representations of the buttons, 6 of the buttons that would appear on a Honeywell 200 control panel. Again, this is something that I just did decorative for myself. I've kept them. They did get exhibited once in Providence, Rhode Island, and I submit them every now and then, but they're not available. Will come from the inspiration is usually what I'm thinking about at the time. I mean, that's kind of obvious, but it's also what I'm experiencing or what I'm watching on TV. And with these 2 pieces, I'd been watching, before History Channel became like all ancient aliens all the time, there was a show on there called Banned from the Bible, which I found fascinating because it was scholars talking about stories and parables that didn't make it into the Bible. They may have made it into or they may be part of the Apocrypha, they may be part of the Midrash, but the involve biblical era characters, but they're not part of the Old and New Testament. And one of the stories, the top one, is Asenath, who is the wife of Joseph. Now, she is mentioned in the Bible, but just one line that says she's the wife of Joseph. In one of the apocryphal stories, it tells about how she becomes his wife. She is a pagan. Joseph worships Yahweh. She worships one of her pagan gods, maybe Baal or something like that. But she really wants to get married to Joseph. So she sequesters herself for several days and prays. And during this prayer, a mystical character, it's not said who, but a mystical character comes to her with this perfectly white honeycomb and offers it to her. And as she's eating it, bees come up out of the honeycomb and sting her lips. That's to cleanse her lips from the pagan prayers that she had been saying previously. And then, you know, according to the variation you're reading, they either die and fall to her feet or they fly away. So, you know, as I'm, you know, hearing about that story, I'm thinking, you know, this is kind of a horrifying imagery. Bees on a person's lips. You take that image out of the story, you put it here in contemporary times with no context, it looks like it's part of a horror movie of some sort, or that this is something that should be, you know, fearful. Also around the same time, BBC was having a James Bond marathon, watching a lot of James Bond films. So I decided to do a series. Now there's only 2 here. Eventually I'll get to 4. But using, because a lot of the stories that were banned from the Bible have a female as the lead character. And in part, that's why they were banned. Or, you know, not included. I won't say banned, not included in the Bible because it was a female. And there were males compiling it and deciding which books and which parables to keep and which to throw out. So I used the Bond girls, the classic Bond girls, as the models for these. So the top one, Asenath, that's Ursula Andress, is the model from Dr. No. The bottom one is Thecla. She has her own story. She's a saint, or becomes a saint. She baptizes herself because no one else will baptize her, and she produced several miracles in her lifetime. One of them being that she was tied to a stake and going to be burned at the stake, and a storm started just as it was going to happen. She was then arrested and thrown into a arena with lions and other wild animals. And the story is that the female lions lay down around her to protect her while she was in there, and the other animals gave up. In the arena, there is allegedly a pool of either seals or piranhas, depends on which version you read. She decides to use that pool to baptize herself. So after the other animals leave her, she runs to the pool, jumps in, baptizes herself. None of the animals in the pool touch her either. So the one on the bottom is Jane Seymour from Live and Let Die. The text about that now is, for the top one, Disrupt Me. I was reading somebody's blog at that point, and he was talking about, you know, we need to disrupt the classic business model. And it was just disrupt, one after another. About everything needed to be disrupted. And I thought, well, that's great for, you know, the disruptor, but not really that great for the disruptee. Like, who would actually say disrupt me? So I used that as the phrase. It's sort of faded in there. It's ghosted in there again, like the other pieces I was showing. It's so that you either looking at the text or you're looking at the image, but you're not really looking at both. And ultimately, in doing that one, it it sort of became like this statement of defiance. And I'm doing these around when the Me Too movement was really gaining steam. I didn't, I'm not trying to capitalize on that, but that's part of, the collective consciousness at that point. So I'm thinking, okay, just have it as a woman putting out a statement of defiance, saying, go ahead, disrupt me. Go ahead, exclude me. I'm not really that happy with the way Thecla came out. If you go in closer, paint's kind of blotchy. The blue isn't the blue isn't really the right shade. Oh, we're back to that. Okay. There we go. So I'll probably redo this one at some point. These two were done in fluorescent paint. You can't really tell. I mean, they're very vivid, obviously, under tungsten light. If you take them out in sunlight, they glow a little bit. The UV light just makes them a little bit more vibrant. When you put them under a black light in a dark room, that's when they really glow. If you go to my Instagram feed, maybe a year or so ago, there's a photo of azimuth under black light.
And are these two available for purchase?
They are.
So you'll see if you go through exhibit in the upper right-hand corner where it has the title, if you are able to click on that, then you get a little bit more information on each piece. And so some of them link you to Artsy to go and purchase. Others are to inquire, and that would connect you with the museum. So if you're interested in any of the pieces. But I think this was a really fabulous chance to hear from you and hear about the artwork. And thank you to everybody that participated.
Yes,
I think
thank
everybody
you.
stayed on through the whole thing. So that was really fantastic. If anybody has any more questions, now's the
Well,
time.
I have another quick question.
Yes, Barbara.
So I know these are all your children.
Yeah.
And it's hard to pick, but if you had to pick, do you have a favorite piece?
The favorite piece is usually the one I've just finished. And I think
Okay.
it's awesome. And like the best thing, in most cases, it's usually, the one that I finished and I think it's the best one I've ever done and it's awesome. But then 3 months later, I'm on to the next one and that's, it's the ignored child after that.
Okay.
So it changes. Like there's ones that this one, the one that's in the middle here, the very tall explosion one, I've kept that one because I have liked it so much. And that one, it's got also got a very personal meaning behind it. And there is another one that I've kept because when I put it up on the wall, I was like, all right, that's perfect. That's where it's going to stay.
Okay. Great. Thanks.
Yep. No
Really,
problem.
really great. Thank you. Thank you
you're-
for inviting us.
Oh, I'm so happy that you and Tom were able to make it.
Absolutely. Wouldn't have missed it. Your work is beautiful.
Thank you very much.
Thank you, Will.
Thank you,
Will.
Mama.
Very good. Really
thank you.
enjoyed it.
Oh,
Thank
Karen.
you.
Let me
Very
give
enjoyable.
a quick shout out to Karen there down in the corner. She's a fellow Emerson alum. Hey, all right, in her car. Hopefully not driving.
Well, we had a lot of great comments too in the chat that you'll get a chance to look at afterwards probably, but everybody's very impressed with your artwork.
Oh, great.
And your style. Outstanding. Congrats. Thank you. Very impressive. Love the
you.
sharpness of your art. So I think everybody's echoing the same thoughts. And it was a really great opportunity to hear from you too. Kind of made everything come to life a little bit more. So
Yeah, I
thank
mean,
you.
when I went to the 42nd annual, the opening there with some friends, and we can look at the pieces and we can kind of marvel, like we were all artists of some kind. We can sort of marvel at the techniques that we know. Like there was one with actual silkworm shells like eggshells in it. And one of my friend's girlfriend was like, oh, look, silkworms. I mean, she knew that because she has worked with fabrics. But what the meaning, the intent, anything grander than, well, this is like a nice composition and these are nice colors, we're kind of lost, without a program guide or anything like that. So, I'm glad to be able to share light on this. I mean, obviously, like what I've said in a lot of statements is I do things obviously that are not going to be like, if you go into a gallery, you're going to notice it. But there's also there's thought and stuff behind it that you would never know, without me talking about it or without reading some kind of program guide.
Yeah, it's a wonderful experience to be able to hear directly from the artist, their thought process, right? So
Yeah.
Well,
Thank
thank
you.
you, everyone. And thank you, William, for your insight tonight. And I hope that everybody will stay in touch with us. And we hope to see everybody in person soon as well.
Oh, definitely.
All
And
right,
thank you
thank
very
you.
much. I'm glad
Thank
to
you. Take care.
be able to take part of this. Goodbye, everyone.
Bye-bye.
Bye.